We have a reading this morning from Howard Thurman, The Value of Struggle. It's taken from a book called For the Inward Journey. It was a beautiful little garden just outside the dining room window. With a simplicity characteristic of him, my friend gave me the names and explained the habits of life of various plants growing there. I was struck by what was said about a little bush which grew near the steps. This plant is called Daphne. It's not doing well here because it's too comfortably situated. The soil is too rich. It gets too much protection. This plant tends to go to wood and leaves with very, very poor blossoms if it is placed where it does not have to struggle. The aim of all plants is to reproduce themselves by making its strength and by concentrating on its main business, the production of blossoms, which in turn become seeds, the guarantee of the perpetuation of its kind. Then the silence fell while my mind took wings. An easy life devoid of challenge, with too much protection, scatters the energy, dissipates the resources, works against singleness of mind, without which there can be no real fulfillment. Most of us do not voluntarily seek the difficult thing, the hard job, and the stubborn task. There are some people who are born with such singleness of mind that instinctively they gravitate toward the tough assignment. There are always those to whom we turn automatically if there is something to be done that requires unusual courage, patience, or concentrated effort. These persons, by their temperaments and will to do, contribute deeply to our own delinquency and weakness. There are others who are afflicted with a morbid sense of martyrdom and who seem perpetually to be atoning for some hidden sin by volunteering to do the unpleasant thing, by taking upon themselves responsibilities which in the end merely deepen their own sense of guilt or self-mortification. It is wisdom so to understand oneself that one will not accept the role within one's range of choice that causes one to go to wood and leaves. We are not like the Daphne plant. Sometimes within very wide limits, often within extremely narrow limits, we have the privilege of choice. Some things we know will contribute to our weaknesses, to our tendency to grow flabby and soft. Some things we know toughen our fiber and cause us to pull all our resources in the effort to achieve singleness of mind, of purpose, and of will. Wood and leaves, or the blossom of fulfillment. Which? This reading really leads very well into my reflection. I am bitterly disappointed by the confirmation decision. I am appalled, anxious, worried. I cried yesterday. For a while I was alone. I cried in my dark living room. And we go on. I have these feelings about everything in our increasingly polarized and politicized landscape. I cannot understand how so many senators, particularly those who were wavering, could not move into a moral vision, which I understand to be moving to a higher plane of thought, considering the good of all and the fundamentals of character. This month, and always, we take comfort in the fact that we all share a similar moral vision, that we are guided by principles of morality and behavior. In the words of our minister, we are all on the path of speaking boldly and walking the walk of moral vision clearly and courageously. My first approach to supporting this theme was that I really had nothing to offer. that I'm a failure at walking this path, and that I do not do enough. I criticize myself because I don't put my feet literally on the ground very much anymore. I've done my share of marches, but now my activism is mainly done from home, via phone calls, emails, petitions, small amounts of monetary support here and there. Oddly enough, when I contemplated that I don't do enough, and identified that I feel guilty for not attending our Black Lives Matter vigils more regularly, I energized myself and I actually managed to show up for the vigil this week. And of course I did a lot of activism on the Kavanaugh nomination. I know there is no judgment from any of those who are regular attendees at Black Lives Matter. I come, I participated, I may be there again. I hope so. In any case, feeling guilty about things is not what we're about. My calendar is full. I guard my energy for personal and family needs. I put things important to my personal well-being first. Then I place service to family and friends, connection to family as my next priority. Then I move to the broader world. I do what I can. Upon further reflection, I moved away from guilt. I realized I have plenty of moral vision. We have plenty of moral vision. I and we are living it out. We all need to recognize the value of what we do contribute. I know I learned liberal religious and moral values at home, though the beliefs of generations behind me. I know my daughter and my granddaughter are activists in their own ways, working for what we believe is true and just. So here's a picture of Uma, now 13. She lives in Arizona, and this is her first political action call. So I'm excited about that. She actually thought that he might answer the phone. And she said, "Hi, I'm not a registered voter, but I am a constituent. I want you to say no on Kavanaugh. He's a horrible person who assaulted 3 women, if not more, and I say vote no." So that's the 13-year-old version. We stand behind each other. We stand behind our children, our grandchildren, as informed and supportive witnesses. It's one of the most important things we do. People learn moral vision from each other. I stand behind Uma and all grandchildren. We stand behind our friends here. We support and champion what we can all do collectively. We are part of important things meant to support justice on all fronts. We must move forward with courage and hope. We can and we do contribute one more step, one more word, one more prayer, and one more song. So I invite you to join with me in singing those words in our hymn number 168, One More Step. And please stand in body or spirit as you are able.
when speaking about moral vision, speaking about prophets who speak truth to power, it's almost always easier for me to look to the past than it is to try and think of new words that I might say. So that's what we're going to do today. We have 3 offerings from some honest-to-goodness prophets who have spoken truth to power in their times, in their lives, and in their own words. So we're going to have 3 different people who come up and read today, and I'm going to do a little framing and introduction for each of them. So to start off, might be a big surprise that I picked some of these. We have some of the old-time prophets, the Hebrew prophets. Selections of readings that Drew Calvin is going to read for us to show us that this has been going on for a long, long time. And yet we are still here, still following in that tradition. So with some words from the Hebrew prophets. Drew? Get this higher for you.
Hear this, you who trample the needy and destroy the poor of the land. I will never forget anything you have done. To others, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and his upper rooms by injustice. Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and needy. He has told you, O human, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Do not oppress the widow, the fatherless, the immigrant, or the poor.
Amen.
Second reading I'm actually going to do. These are the words of Lila El-Haddad, who's an award-winning Palestinian author and public speaker who now lives in the U.S. She wrote a blog post about her experience in traveling to Egypt and trying to leave and come to America. From November 28, 2016, called The People Have Spoken, The People Have Heard. She writes, "Yesterday I reconnected with a former high school teacher of mine. Her name was Mary Doherty, and Miss Doherty was a mentor to me and instrumental in guiding me to where I am today. It took me years to locate her, and yesterday, finally, through the miracle of the social network, I did. Now, this would not be significant or blog-worthy, except that the story came full circle yesterday because our virtual reunion coincided with the remarkable events that unfolded in Egypt. Many years ago, 16 to be exact, Miss Doherty single-handedly helped me stand up to the Mubarak regime. I'm not saying this to be grandiose. I'm saying it because it's true. I've always remembered this incident, which forever changed how I found myself dealing with situations of incomprehensible repression and overwhelming odds. Namely, the lesson I learned was to never allow the situation to own me, but to own the situation. What happened was as follows. I was part of our high school Model UN club in Bahrain. We were invited to participate in another school's conference in Cairo. And so the necessary preparations were made. Tickets were booked. Visas were issued, except mine. It was 1995, and Cairo, still seething from Arafat's poorly played decision to ally himself with Saddam Hussein, was as punishment still banning Palestinians from entering Egypt. Though I was not an American citizen, the American ambassador intervened on my behalf. Our school was affiliated with the DoD, and one of our club's advisors was a former naval officer. But the answer was always the same: this is impossible. There are orders and high ones, and nothing could change that, we were told. But Miss Doherty, an economics teacher and head of the Model UN Club, would not have it. It came down to 2 a.m. the morning of our group's scheduled departure. After obtaining approval from the school and my mother, who was well aware of the consequences of her decision, but wanted me to try anyway, Miss Doherty decided to take me with the class to Cairo without a visa. She stayed up till 4 in the morning finding a chaperone. When she did, it became a miracle that Bahraini airport officials did not notice I lacked an Egyptian visa when I went through security. Eventually, we made it to the Cairo airport. All the students passed through unhindered, and then came my turn. We waited anxiously as the customs official flipped through my passport time and again in search of this missing piece of paper. "You'll have to come with us," they said. Miss Doherty, a small, strong woman in her 60s, very close to retirement, would not take no for an answer. Even when I thought she would throw the towel in, she stood, not sat, by my side in the face of the officials of the dreaded state security. My case was eventually referred after 14 hours of straight no, no, go back, go back. "Miss Doherty, please sit down and rest." No, no, no. I pleaded with her, and she said, "I will not. I will stay standing until they recognize that we are not going anywhere. You will get through this." She stated it as though it was inevitable. Eventually, she had to continue on with the students, but the chaperone stayed with me, and she left me with clear instructions to stand my ground until I got through. "But how?" I asked. "How can I stand up to such a system? I'm only 16. You have to show them you really want it and that you won't back down." The next day, bleary-eyed and exhausted, I was brought into the security office for the 4th or 5th or 6th time that night, and the question that time was completely unexpected. "You're not backing down, are you?" the official said. "No, sir, I am not," I replied bluntly. "Well, young woman, you really do us proud," came the reply, in a rare moment of sincerity and honest emotion. He left his office without further comment, and suddenly I was ushered through customs without even a stamp in my passport. I was stunned and would be for days and years to come, because the story does not always end this way. Years later, in 2008, I was facing a similar dilemma with my 2 young children who were not allowed to come to the U.S. because of visas. I told them this story, relayed my own trial as a young 16-year-old. I didn't think of it as more than a turning point in my own personal growth. Back then, or until yesterday, when in the day of triumph, the Egyptian people banded together, and together they overcame the repressive will of the regime, overcame the fear and repression that regime had planted in their minds, and there was no turning back. They owned the situation. The situation no longer owned them. A situation that, as it affected 4 generations of my family, had repressed them mentally and physically, had come to an end. The people had spoken. The people had acted. And the people were heard. Our last words of prophecy by the poet Audre Lorde, who in a speech to Oberlin College in 1968, perhaps. Elaine, you can check me on that. 1988, thank you for that. Audre Lorde, American writer, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist, best known for technical mastery and emotional expression, as well as her poems that express anger and outrage at civil and social injustices that she observed throughout her life. Her poems and prose largely deal with issues related to civil rights, feminism, and the exploration of Black female identity. The words of Audre Lorde.
Hello? Hello? It is not enough to believe in justice. The median income for Black and Hispanic families has fallen in the last 3 years, while the median income of white families rose 1.5%. We are 11 years away from a new century, and a leader of the Ku Klux Klan can still be elected to Congress from the Republican Party in Louisiana. Little 14-year-old Black boys in the 7th grade are still being lynched for dating white girls. It is not enough to say we are against racism. It is not enough to believe in everyone's right to his or her own sexual preference. Homophobic jokes are not just fraternity hijinks. Gay bashing is not just fooling around. Less than a year ago, a white man shot 2 white women in their campsite in Pennsylvania, killing one of them. He pleaded innocent, saying he had been maddened by their making love inside their own tent. If you were sitting on that jury, what would you decide? It is not enough to believe anti-Semitism is wrong when the vandalism of synagogues is increasing amid the homegrown fascism of hate groups like the Christian Identity and Tom Metzger's American Front. The current rise in jokes against Jewish women masks anti-Semitism as well as women hatred. What are you going to say the next time you hear a Jap story? We do not need to become each other in order to work together, but we do need to recognize each other, our differences as well as the sameness of our goals. Not for altruism, for self-preservation, survival. Every day of your lives is practice in becoming the person you want to be. No instantaneous miracle is suddenly going to occur and make you brave and courageous and true. And every day that you sit back, silent, refusing to use your power, terrible things are being done in our name. The white fathers have told us, I think, therefore I am. But the Black mother within each one of us, the poet inside, whispers in our dreams, I feel, therefore I am. Learn to use what you feel to move you toward action. Change, personal and political, does not come about in a day or a year, but it is our day-to-day decisions, the way in which we testify with our lives to those things in which we say we believe that empower us. Your power is relative, but it is real. And if you do not learn to use it, it will be used against you, me, and our children. Change did not begin with you, and it will not end with you. But what you do with your life is an absolutely vital piece of that chain. The testimony of your daily living is the missing remnant in the fabric of our future. There are so many different parts to each of us, and there are so many of us. If we can envision the future we desire, we can work to bring it into being. We need all the different pieces of ourselves to be strong, as we need each other and each other's battles for empowerment. That surge of power you feel inside you now does not belong to me, nor to your parents, nor to your professors. That power lives inside of you. It is yours, you own it, and you will carry it out of this room. And whether you use it or whether you waste it, you are responsible for it. Good luck to you all. Together, in the conscious recognition of our differences, we can win, and we will. La lucha continua, the struggle continues.
Thank you to our readers. Thank you to you all for being here. Whatever your one more is, I hope that we can all commit to that, because it is needed, not just for the world out here, but for the world in here as well. Amen. If you would